Good morning. We're getting ready to start our committee meeting. I know everyone enjoys the fellowship and getting the chance to catch up with people they haven't seen in a while. So welcome to the sixth meeting of the Interim Joint Agriculture Committee. We'll start by calling the roll.
Senator Chambers Armstrong, Senator Boswell, Senator Carpenter, Senator Deneen, here. Senator Givens, here. Senator Thayer, here. Senator Webb, Senator West, Senator Westerfield, Senator Wilson, Representative All, Representative Callaway,
present.
Representative Kleins,
here.
Representative Dixon, Representative Pfister,
here.
Representative Graham, Representative Hale,
Present.
Representative Hart,
Here.
Representative King,
Present.
Representative Cook, here. Representative McPherson,
Present.
Representative Neighbors,
Here.
Representative Pollock,
Here.
Representative Pratt,
Here.
Representative Rayburn, Representative Stalker,
Present.
Representative Stevenson, Representative Tate,
Here.
Representative Thomas,
Present.
Representative Tipton,
Here.
Co-Chair Howell,
Here.
and Co-Chair Heath.
Here. We do have a quorum. Chair would entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting. A motion and second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. And the ayes have it. Motion carried. So we're going to go in the order that's printed on the list. So we'll invite Commissioner Shell to come to the table and bring anybody with you, or you can fly solo. You know how this is done. So, Commissioner, if you'll introduce yourself for the record, and the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and it's good to be with everybody. I am Jonathan Shell, the Kentucky Commissioner of Agriculture. I'd like to first start out by just correcting something that I just heard. I think it's really important. Is that I got told very early on in my political career, whenever you go down in that Monroe, Allen County area, that you have to be really careful about what you say. And so I went down there, and I was talking to what I thought was called Sean McPherson. And he told me there's no fear in us, it's Ferson. So I like to always aggravate Sean about that. He said there's no fear in the McPhersons. But it's good to be with you all this morning. You all have got a great lineup, and I'm not going to try and take up too much of your time. I just want to give a few updates on kind of where we've been going for the last 11 months at the Department of Agriculture and some of the initiatives and priorities that we're going to be coming into session with coming up. And if Mark Bolin and Brandon Reed, if both of them would like to come up, they're welcome to do so, just in case there's any questions. Or if you all want to harass them in any way, I think that would be fine too. Is Brandon coming? All right. So first, would just like to say that this first 11 months that we've been in office has been truly a pleasure. We've been able to travel the state quite a bit. We've been able to do some what I consider to be pretty outstanding things. One of them is through your all's work and through the works of the county clerks across the state of Kentucky, we had a record ag tag this year. A record of $930,000 raised in the ag tag fund, which was a $195,000 increase from year over year from the last year that we were here. So each organization gets split up a third, and a third to the Kentucky 4-H, Kentucky FFA, and the Kentucky Proud program. And that goes to helping youth across the state of Kentucky, and it's doing its job. It's doing some really good work all across the state. We're on a push for a road to $1 million. And so trying to raise those dollars. So in your local communities, as we come into February and March, we'll be asking you all to help with that promotion, pushing it out so that your farmers know to donate that $10 in your local communities. And most of that money stays there locally. Half the money that both of the organizations get goes back to those local FFA and local 4-H chapters. And it's just a really great program, and they do a lot of really good stuff. You know, what I tell people is that $10 that they're donating is not going to change your life. You know, we spend that at a gas station most of the time when we go in, but it truly could change a child's life in this state, helping them get an FFA jacket, helping them buy an animal for their 4-H livestock sales, helping them start an SAE program so that they can have an entrepreneurship in their local community. And so I would just encourage you all as we move past the first of the year and we get into February and March, to help me in pushing that campaign for a road to 1 million. The other thing is we have been on this campaign for the last 11 months around agriculture is economic development, and we've had meetings across the state of Kentucky in various areas. We've tried to regionalize that and get as many places as we can. We're going to continue that after the first of the year. We have one more meeting this year. It's going to be in London, Kentucky on November the 20th. And so if you're in that area, or if you're not and you would like to come to one and you weren't able to make it the one in your area, we would definitely like for you to be present there so that you can hear and see a lot of the stuff that we have in Kentucky agriculture that maybe you don't know about currently. A lot of you all have been here for a while, so you know a lot of the great things that we have in Kentucky agriculture around processing and economic development. But we're educating our local economic developers and our local elected officials across the state and bringing in local businesses so that instead of always chasing a smokestack, we can look at what's in our resources that we have in our rural local communities to really try and use best practices for land usage across the state. We've had a meeting in Murray that went really well. We had one in Owensboro that was really good. We had one in Moorhead, and our next one is going to be in London, Kentucky. So we're traveling those around. We're gonna spread those out next year as well. Try to make it into as many communities as we can across the state to highlight the economic opportunities that we have in agriculture. We also are working on our food as medicine every single day, traveling around the state, going to our various hospitals, working towards getting these regional meetings set up as well. And we've had several of those across the state of Kentucky that we've had some really good conversations. If when we started this, had an idea of what we needed to find out, we had an idea of the problems that we had in our food distribution system from a knowledge and communication standpoint. We had an idea of what the infrastructure needs may look like, but we have learned so much. And every time we peel back a layer of the onion on our food distribution system, we find out how much more complicated that it gets. And so we're really trying to put together a supply chain flow chart to really help for our ag community and our farmers to understand how we get inside of the various opportunities that we'll have around food distribution, whether it's in our hospital systems or our school districts. And I want to point out one thing that I think is really remarkable about just the consumption power that we have in the state of Kentucky for two things. The UK St. Clair's in Moorhead, the CEO of the hospital, Don Lloyd, gave a presentation at our Ag is Economic Development Regional Meeting. And he said that they feed 500,000 meals a year out of that one hospital. 500,000 meals out of that one hospital a year. If you add the 6 school districts in that same area that surround Moorhead, Rowan County, it becomes 7.1 million meals with those 6 school districts and that one hospital. Representative Pollock and myself were able to go to Marion County about 2 weeks ago and talking to the food nutrition specialist that's there, Jennifer Wheeler. A great lady, had a great lot of information that she was able to share with us. It was for our Farm to Fork month, which is our Farm to School month, which is in October. And I asked her to give me an estimate, a printout of how many meals that they serve at that school. So I think Marion County is around a county of about 22,000 people. They have 3,000 students in their school P through 12, and they feed over 800,000 meals in that one school district a year. So when we think about the consumption power that we've got in every rural community across the state of Kentucky, we can make a big impact. We're not ready right now to come to you and say this is what we need to do. We're still gathering that information to really try and understand better before we put that plan into place. But we're already seeing some results from that. We're having a lot of really great conversations around our protein consumption in our hospitals, making sure that we're getting that more locally from cattle producers in the state of Kentucky. We're having those discussions around the infrastructure that we currently have on farm and distributive so that we can get more of that food inside of the locations that are really able to consume that in a meaningful way. And so we're really excited about the progress that we've made over the last 11 months on both of those initiatives, the information that we've gathered, and really a lot of the results that we've had are not press release results. They're things that are really making a difference to businesses across the state of Kentucky. We're helping them save money. We're helping them communicate with their local needs that they have, whether that be in the water districts that they're dealing with or whether that be with local government regulation or initiatives that are going on. And so we have really made some inroads in asking 2 questions to the major assets that we have in agriculture. The first one has been, what can we do to help secure you for the next generation of agriculture? And the second question is, how can we help you expand whenever the time comes? We have been very fortunate to have great relationships with the Economic Development Cabinet and with the Health and Family Services Cabinet as we've worked through both of these really good initiatives. So that brings me to one of the priorities that we're going to be bringing to the session for you all this year. We're doing a reorganization for the department. As many of you all know, as we come into session after we have change, there's usually some stuff that the executive branch looks to reorganize. And so one of those is we're going to develop a economic development division at the Department of Agriculture. We've already hired an economic development director. Some of you all will know Jacob Estes. Some of you all may be mad that I stole him, but Jacob's doing a great job. He's really educating himself on the right things that he needs to be doing, getting out across the state of Kentucky, talking to the commodity groups, talking to these businesses and really focusing on it. And so we feel like that if we're going to put a focus on this and it's something that we care about, that we want to highlight that in the Department of Agriculture. So we're creating the Economic Development Division at the department. We're also rearranging other components of it. We are creating its own division of Raising Hope to be able to incorporate the safety, health, and mental portion of what we have in the marketing department. We feel like it's become such a big program and so important in the funding that you all have given it that we need to put extra attention on what it's doing across the state of Kentucky with the various programs that we have. The other thing that we're looking at is consolidating some of the things that we currently have there, pushing some of the divisions together that make sense. So we're going to consolidate our shows and fairs and our livestock marketing together so that that's one division. They're functioning very similar to each other right now, and making sure that as we look at government efficiencies that we are helping have supervisors of the various divisions and directors that we have to where that we're maximizing our employees' opportunities that they have, and really trying to help through government efficiencies and consolidating as much as we possibly can in the various divisions. And so that's one of the things that we're going to be bringing. That's a majority of what will be in the reorganization that we'll be bringing to you all. The second thing is we've identified an issue whenever we brought over from the Governor's Office of Ag Policy and it became the Kentucky Office of Ag Policy, that the ethics disqualification that was in there applies to the entire Department of Agriculture. And we feel like that should only apply to the KOAP employees the same way that it did when it was the Governor's Office of Ag Policy. And so we have employees at the Department of Agriculture that are in agriculture, that are farmers themselves, and they're being disqualified from being able to apply for new and beginning farmer program loans and other things that are there. And we have about 250 employees at the department. There's about 20 of them that are in KOAP. And we feel like we need to separate and make a distinction between the two differences of classifications there, of having Kentucky Office of Ag Policy, those employees that are under Brannon's division, and the rest of the Department of Agriculture, so that we're not unfairly or unduly burdening those employees. The next thing that we are looking at bringing to you all is the joint resolution for the Economic Development Fund that we got into the last budget cycle, this $5 million that we're looking at putting together for dedicated ag economic development monies in the state of Kentucky. And so we'll be bringing a joint resolution for you all to be able to vote on to make sure that money gets appropriated in this next budget cycle. We'll also be bringing to you the funding criteria for that and the metrics and criteria in order to qualify for those dollars. We're currently putting that together, looking at how can we maximize these dollars. One of the things that you're going to see in this is, as many of you all know, in agriculture, we don't always have the job creation, the direct job creation, but we have huge impact in local communities. And so that's what you're going to see from this is we're trying to think outside the box. We're trying to look at this in a new economy way. We're trying to look at this as a very dedicated portion for agriculture specifically, not to replace anything that we have at the Economic Development Cabinet, but to have this as an addition to for our rural communities, for rural development. And I think you all will be really pleased at what we've put together with that whenever we get that filed and the time comes. With that, Mr. Chairman, open to any questions that any of the committee would have, and I know you all have a big schedule today, so I don't want to belabor too many things, but I just want to tell you all one more time how grateful I am for the communication, for the work that you all do in your communities across the state, and how great your advocacy has been. I saw many of you all were able to come to the state fair this year, and we had a great state fair, one of the best we've ever had, and cannot thank you all enough for the involvement that you all have participated in with that. The last thing before I open it up, Mr. Chairman, if anybody has any questions, is don't forget the North American starts now. So we have I think it goes through November. It's 3 weeks. I don't have the date right now. We'll get it before we leave here. But it's going on right now. I went up yesterday. They're still moving in dairy goats and dairy cattle and doing all the things. And so if you all want to participate, please contact our office, contact the Exposition Center with Mr. Beck, and we'll get you all up there so that you can see some of what's going on. It's really remarkable how big that show is and how involved it is from an international and national standpoint. When you walk through the barns, it looks a little different than the state fair. It's not Kentucky. It's not all Kentucky. This is states all over the United States that are coming here to compete at the North American International Livestock Exposition. And so it's a showcase that we get to have for animal livestock in the state. And we have the ag land set up again this year, or for the first time. They liked it so much, what we did at the state fair, that they asked us to put it at the North American. And also, if you go, I asked them to set up a spot to where that you and your families can take your Christmas pictures if you want to. And so we've got the Kentucky Proud Christmas set up. There's going to be a backdrop, Christmas trees, some things that you and your family can do. So if you come up there, you can also make it a dual trip. You can also take your Christmas pictures that you can put out. I feel like we're early enough that you can still get them in the mail. And so if you know anybody in your local community that's looking for a place to do that, that'll be a really nice location.
Thank you. Good report, and appreciate that. I plan on attending the North American. Members, you watch your email. If you missed it, David Beck and Kentucky Venue sent out an email inviting the legislators to come to the North America, and they gave a couple of nights that you could come and attend the horse show. So if you missed that in your email, maybe go back through and check that. I'd encourage you to take advantage of that if possible. And we do have Representative Kleins with a question or comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Shell, could you give us an update on your pumpkin contest? I'm guessing since you didn't update us, you somehow didn't win. So I was just curious how that turned out.
I think if we had a popular vote, I would have won. But I did not. Representative Climbs, I appreciate you pointing that out in a very public setting. I actually did win one this year, though. I competed at my local auctions giant pumpkin contest, and I actually grew one bigger for that than I did the state fair, and we ended up winning that. It was 410 pounds that I won at my local auction, but the 310-pounder at the state fair was not the winner. The winner this year was 1,137 pounds, and it was Dwight Sloan. For the 6th time in his life, he has won the giant pumpkin contest. He is from Floyd County. And I think that's remarkable that if you think about all the places that you could grow a giant pumpkin, that Floyd County is the place to do it. And we've got some pretty amazing farmers across the state. Actually, Adair County, Scott Buyak, actually broke the state record again this year with 1,900 pounds at the West Virginia weigh-in. And so if you're not submerged in the subculture that is giant pumpkin growing, I promise you it is a new and just wild, wild west of agriculture, and I can get you involved. I have seeds at the Department of Agriculture and in my truck today. I can get Jeremy to run out there and go get some real quick if we have to, but if you want to grow a giant pumpkin next year, I'll tell you everything you need to do except the one thing that will beat me. That way, at least I'm not in last place for the 3rd year in a row. Yep.
Representative Pollock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Kleins, great question. I just want to say thank you, Commissioner, for taking time to come to Marion County that day. It was very productive. Just to add to that particular day, the FFA grew the lettuce that the Marion County cattlemen's cooked real beef, not the soybean type burgers that we've been accustomed to in the past. But anyway, it was a good day. One of the things that I think, obviously, you're doing a great job, and I love the report you gave us today. You've mentioned this, and you don't need to get into the details, but it really caught my attention is that talking about our corn and our grain and how Brazil as a country is stepping up and is involved in obviously producing that, and now we're in a somewhat of a competitive market for that. Share a little bit about that information to the committee, please.
You know, you have a presenter that'll be up here a little bit later. Laura Noth, I know, is here, and she will be able to tell you a lot more intelligently about the various details of that. But the way that I have had it explained to me and the way that I've explained it to other people is like last year was the first year that Brazil outpaced the United States in production of corn. And when you think about how economies work, supply and demand, we have a glutton of commodity on the market right now and have had for the last year, which is why we've seen a decline so rapidly in the prices that we've been able to enjoy. It went from $7 plus corn down to $4, if not less, in certain times. And it's because we've had too much on the market. Brazil is increasing their supply. Now, I do think that with some of the political turmoil that is happening in Brazil, some of the unsettling that's there, depending on what happens with international trade after the first of the year, especially through Chinese trade, we could see another drastic change in the marketplace, hopefully for the better. I think that those of us in this room, especially looking at national politics, we need to be diligent in making sure that as we see the new administration coming in after January 20th, that those that we have in the positions of the various secretaries and the various commissioners that are going to be appointed, that we're communicating with them the importance of international trade, the importance of smart tariffs, the importance of what agriculture means. Because if you remember back, every time that we've had trade issues, it always comes back that agriculture's hurt first if a problem arises. And we just need to be very diligent after we look at this from the first of the year. And we're going to be in constant communication with the new administration in Washington, whoever ends up being the Secretary of Agriculture and head of the USDA and all the other things that are there. And so that's a great question, though, Representative Pollock. And, you know, what my hope is that we can get to a point to where we are consuming more in Kentucky than we're having to export, because that's how we control our destiny. That's how we control the marketplace more. In a global market, the more that we can consume in our state, the better that we will be able to do. That's the reason we're focusing on the consumption power that we have in the various hospitals and schools and other places for our vegetable and protein markets. It's also why we're highly focused on our biofuels market and pushing that $4 corn through high cattle and high chickens and high pork to help add that value without it going down a barge, a truck, or a rail. We feel like the biofuels industry, as we've talked about several times, that some of the new and innovative things that is happening around the sustainable aviation fuel is a market that we can tap into. If you've not heard me tell you this, we have the 3rd and 12th largest aviation consumers in the world here in Kentucky. UPS consumes 7.3 million gallons of aviation fuel every 3 days. 50% of Amazon's airplanes daily land in northern Kentucky at the World Port there for Amazon and UPS. And if you travel just down the river in Memphis, that's where the #1 aviation consumer of fuel is in the world, which is FedEx. And so for Kentucky, the Ohio and the Mississippi River, the connection that we have the 1st, 3rd, and 12th largest just right here in this region. So we've got the consumption power, we've got the feedstock, and really I think that we're positioned very well, and I think nationally everyone else sees this as well. At the national conference they had on sustainable aviation fuel in Georgia, Kentucky was mentioned multiples of times at various points without it being a Kentuckian doing it. And so people recognize the power that we have here in Kentucky around this new market that's there. I don't ever look at these things around carbon reduction and green energy. I look at this as alternative uses for agriculture crops, which is what we have to have in order to sustain the profitability on the farm. And so that's the reason that we're so focused and highly focused on trying to make this happen, to figure out where the investments come from. Thank you, Representative Pollock.
Senator Thayer.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner.
This is a little bittersweet for me right now.
Well, I can guarantee you for me it's not bitter. It's just sweet.
No.
Nothing personal or anything. Because I'm
This is
still
the last
gonna...
time you're going to get to give me a hard time in a committee, though.
I was just thinking about that.
Yeah.
Well, you know,
Are you going to ask me what the greatest Eagles song is?
Well, we all know that it's Hotel California.
Okay.
Commissioner, you mentioned in the pumpkin competition that you feel like you could have won the popular vote.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I just want to remind you and everyone that it is possible for a Republican to win both the popular vote and the electoral vote. Try harder, Commissioner. Try harder.
Representative McPherson.
Oh.
Yeah, there we go. Thanks the commissioner for clearing that up.
Yes, sir.
My father would be proud. So, we have, in my area, my district, we've got a large number of cattle.
Mm-hmm.
I think I heard you say last time we were here, we've got a third less cattle right now, but we produce a third more beef with that. Going forward, are we tracking, and this is more of an international, are we tracking the number of cattle that's coming across the border, Mexican border, and are they filling in? Because I don't think our numbers are going up, cattle numbers, because heifers are too high. I mean, I was talking to a gentleman the other day, and he said, I've got a load of heifers that are breeding size,
Yep.
and I'm going to sell them because, at $1,700-$1,800, I can't afford to keep them.
Yep. Representative McPherson, you're going to have another expert that's going to be talking here in a minute that'll be able to do a lot better job than I can. But what I would tell you is that as we see it right now, we're at about 51% around heifer retention rate. And so that means 51% of the heifers in Kentucky and America are going into the slaughter facilities, into processing right now. You don't really see retention until you hit about 38%. And so when you think about how long it's going to take, we're still probably a year, 2, 3 away from heifer retention. And as we are focused on trying to maximize as much as we can around processing, because just the way that my simple mind thinks, when you look back 20 years ago, whenever ag development was started, we had 5% of $3 billion in cash receipts was poultry. No, I'm going to repeat that. 5% of $3.3 billion of cash receipts was poultry. Fast forward to today, last year, 25% of $8 billion was poultry. We have the processors here. We have the capacity. We've got the economy. We've got everything. The supply chain functions around that now. It's taken 20 years. So as we look at how we want to do cattle processing in the state, I feel like we've got a lot that we can learn from what happened with poultry over the last 20 years of trying to fatten cattle in the state, trying to get processing here. But one of the more immediate problems that we have that we need to encourage and figure out how to encourage this is get more cows in the country again. Because we've lost our cow herd quite a bit over the last couple of years as we've seen more heifers going into processing and less going into retention. I think we're going to see it, but it's just going to have to be a market transition. Representative, I don't know that it's anything that we can force. I don't know that it's anything that we can highly encourage. For me, I'm a heifer grower myself. We do backgrounders. We sell them off. And, for us, until it starts getting, more reasonable from a logical standpoint, I'm not going to put back into my herd. I've got about 100 mama cows, and we've sold off several of those as weigh cows as they've met their age. And so we're not putting back in until we get to a point to where it makes sense. As far as the cattle coming over the border, Nikki or Dave, whoever's here today, speaking for the Cattlemen's Association, will probably be able to better tell you that. I don't know that number.
Good, Mr. Chairman. I think we've got more, so we've got milk going up, and so we were putting some beef cattle and,
Yes.
and with the dairy, and now that's going to go away, I think, because we need heifers in the dairy supply chain. So, we're just going to keep tightening that up, I think. I mean, that looks like a trend to me.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and there's opportunities to be had there. I mean, it's truly going to be a matter of we're in a changing dynamic right now, and the reason that we have less cattle and more beef is because the genetics of the work that you all have done here in this committee, work that Representative Reed, now Executive Director Reed, has done through KOAP in the past. The genetics that we have in the state of Kentucky are second to none around our beef cattle, and that's one of the reasons is that we've got better cattle, better practices, more conservation. Our farmers understand how to farm grass better now. We're doing everything to the highest extent possible, and that's the reason that what we're looking at is how can we maximize around the processing and end user so that we can control that here in the state, because we've done such a good job on all the commodities that are going to be speaking today. We've got the best of the best now. We're the best farmers in the world right here in Kentucky, and we do the best of all the commodities right here.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. That was the last one I had on my list. Appreciate the presentation. Good job. Keep up the good work.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
We'll bring our
Oh, the 21st, November 21st. North American goes to November 21st.
Thank you. We'll bring up our Kentucky Farm Bureau delegation. And while you guys are coming and getting situated, I forgot to ask our committee members if they have any guests that they need to introduce. You could do that at this time if you need to. Good morning, gentlemen. Make sure your mic is on and introduce yourself for the record, and the floor is yours. You may have to pull that mic closer. If yes, is the light green? Is the light lit up?
Drew Graham, Executive Director, Kentucky Farm Bureau.
Much better, thank you.
Larry Clark, Second Vice President, Kentucky Farm Bureau.
Welcome.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to say, Senator Givens, we're always looking for things for advisory committees, and I think got a good idea today that we'll probably have one on pumpkin production and see if we can talk the commissioner into serving on that. So give us a really good idea today, don't you think, Larry?
I think it will.
But anyway, Representative Heath, Senator Howell, members of the committee, we just appreciate the opportunity to be here today. It's always nice to come in front of the Ag Committee. It was several years ago, about 25 years, I had the opportunity to sit where you do, Representative Heath, and I've always humbly said that that's one of the, in my professional career, that's probably something that I relish more than anything else. That was back when I didn't need glasses and didn't have gray hair, Senator Thayer, but it's been a long time ago, but I certainly remember that and look on it very favorably. What we're fortunate here in Kentucky to have so many members of the General Assembly that tune into our rural communities and tune into agriculture, and that's extremely important. As in the position I'm in, I have an opportunity to meet a lot with those individuals from other states that serve in this capacity, and I can tell you that most of them don't have or aren't as fortunate as we are to have those of you that are sitting there listening to our views, listening to what we can do to better not just the commitment that you have, but to better look at agriculture and realize the needs, to realize what the priorities are, but as well as our rural communities, and we certainly appreciate that. We're very fortunate in that regard. We're also fortunate to have those in our commodity organizations and other organizations to serve Kentucky agriculture and the nucleus that we have here in agriculture in regards to what our priorities are, and as we come to you and ask you for those things that we need so much. Right now, our State Resolutions Committee is meeting, and as you know, we meet this time every year. I would like to say that President Melton would love to have been here today. He had actually a speaking engagement in Western Kentucky and was unable to attend. And our first Vice President, Shane Wiseman, heads up our Resolutions Committee. So what they do at Resolutions, of course, each time of year there's delegates that serve on that. They're elected from each one of our districts that serve on our Resolutions Committee. They take policy recommendations, and they've got them from every county in the state this year, which we're certainly appreciative of. They had like 987 policy recommendations that they'll be looking at yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Almost sounds like how many bills you get in the legislature, doesn't it? But anyway, we look forward to listening to all those, and our advisory committees also send a lot of those in. We do want to make a special thank you to all the members of the General Assembly for their support of our KFB budget issues during this past budget session. Just to name a few, maintain allocation 50% of the tobacco master settlement agreement for agriculture. There's very few states that look back, and I had an opportunity to be here during that time right before the tobacco buyout. Very few states saw the need to leave some of that money to agriculture. And the 50% that has been put into that has allowed us, though none of you were probably there at that time, I don't guess, you have continued to support that and continued to fund that. What that's done is, as Commissioner Shell was talking earlier, it's allowed us to become the cattle producing state that we are in regards to genetics, in regards to, at one time people didn't look forward to the cattle coming out of Kentucky, and now we're at a premium. And it's because of that money, that matching money especially, that we were allowed, that our producers were allowed to use, that allowed them to, whether it's fixing up their facilities, whether it was hay barns, all those kind of things that went into to play as people went from tobacco to something else, that allowed us to do that. And we certainly appreciate and continue to appreciate the support that you've had in that regard. An efficient and adequately funded Department of Agriculture, that's extremely important to Kentucky Farm Bureau and to our producers and to our members. And I will say that the energy that Jonathan has and has come forward in the little time that he's been there is certainly something that we appreciate. We work with them on a daily basis, whether it's through our advisory committees or whether it's through our leadership teams. We're working together daily with Jonathan and with his staff, and we certainly appreciate that and appreciate you continuing to fund it exactly as you do. Increased funding for river ports. Of course, Senator Howell, you know how important that is in your area, and that as we continue to look at at trying to get our goods, to somebody else, so that our producers can continue to operate the way they do, and funding for the Livestock Innovation Center that you, of course, give money to last time, and the work that cattlemen, the work that our Livestock Coalition Committee and all those people have done is certainly appreciated. And I know they had a groundbreaking just, I guess, a couple of weeks ago, and look forward to that getting up. As we mentioned earlier, our resolution process is still ongoing, but we do want to discuss a few issues that we're hearing about as we go toward the 2025 session. First, of course, is maintaining the current sales and use tax on inputs, those exemptions that are so critical to farmers in the Commonwealth. And we support, of course, maintaining the provisions of House Bill 44, which was enacted in '79. The House bill has ensured that citizens across the Commonwealth have some protection from the exponential property tax increases year over year, while assessments and rates on property seem to continue to rise. It's provisions from this particular bill that gives property owners some additional protection. Rural economic development continues to be an important issue as we continue to work with the commissioner and his staff on that, as we work to develop plans and let people know that farming and agriculture are economic development, of course, in rural communities. And we're continuing to look at the current economic development incentives to ensure that agriculture-based businesses that affect that are also included within those incentives, which is certainly important to agriculture. I would also like to say that the main issue that we continue to hear a lot about, and that President Melton, when he took over as president of Kentucky Farm Bureau, was how are we going to continue to maintain agricultural land in this state as we go forward? What needs to be done? What can we do as we go forward? We are never going to be against property rights, number one. That's something that it's sacred to us, that a farmer, those individuals that have all their life invested in land, that they're able to do what they want to with it as they become older. However, for those that want to maintain or want that land maintained into agriculture production, it's time for us to try to figure out how we can help transition from the elderly farmer to someone that wants to continue to farmer in a way that they can still provide them maybe some accesses in their retirement years without having to sell it for $20,000-$30,000 an acre, which we know that's out there a lot. So that's certainly something that we're looking very close at. And to discuss that further, I'd like to turn that over to Larry. So, Larry.
Okay, thank you, Drew. Thank you, Representative Heath, Senator Howell, and all the committee, and thank you all for all you do and what you represent and for agriculture, and thank you for being here with us today. And I'll talk a little bit about that. As Drew said, we're trying to get this land back into the farmers' hands that's going to farm it. So the census came out, a 5-year census, and from 2017 to 22 showed that we had lost more than 500,000 acres of farmland in Kentucky, which is 100,000 acres per year, and that is 274 acres per day and 11 acres per hour lost. And we don't think that's sustainable for Kentucky agriculture. One issue we have identified to help incentivize farmland staying in production is the Selling Farmers Tax Credit, which I think Senator Gibbons had a whole lot to do with getting that together, and we appreciate that. This program was established in 2019, but is limited to beginning farmers, which is defined as anyone with 10 years or less experience in ownership of a farm and farming operation. Unfortunately, this is difficult for young people to purchase as the amount of land that's available today. Our goal being to preserve the farmland and keep in production, we would like to modify that language to allow all active farmers the ability to participate. We would continue to support additional incentives for beginning farmers as well, but believe the Selling Farmer Tax Credit can better achieve our goal by updating this particular definition to allow all active farmers to participate. Drew.
And these are just a few issues, of course, that we have on the table as we go through the session. As you know, Chairman, there's things that come up. And we just always want to say that we appreciate the commitment that you have to Kentucky agriculture and to rural Kentucky. It's extremely important to our organization, and that we certainly look forward to the upcoming session. And in closing, I would like to invite each of you to our annual meeting, which comes up December 4th through 7th, and would certainly extend an invitation to that and hope that y'all get an opportunity to come. And I guess if we'll try to entertain any questions, I'll have Larry answer them.
So, Senator West, you're first up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your presentation today. Really, this is an issue, as a farmer myself, this is an issue that hits close to home, and I really appreciate Farm Bureau taking on this task for sure. And the question I'm about to ask, you may not have the information in front of you, I'm not sure, but in your research on farmland loss, can you comment, do you have a breakdown on what those things are? So, for instance, residential development, commercial development, solar's going to be a key factor in the future on farmland loss. Do you have any information on percentages? And
I'm sure we do, Senator, but I don't have it in front of me. I know that Alita Botts, on a contractual basis, has done a lot of research on this, and of course, a lot of the urban service boundaries, as you know, within counties, establish supposedly what's supposed to be done in regards to residential, in regards to commercial, and those kind of things. As they extend out, we continue to lose land. We know that. And we also know that we can't compete with $20,000 or $30,000 acre land. But the emphasis on this is to educate in a lot of different areas, to be perfectly honest with you, in regards to how to develop wills. You know, I've got a son that farms at home, but he's got 3 sisters. So, you know, if he wants to farm, then we need to make sure at the end of the day that as they transition, that we transition so that everybody's happy, or the best it can be. So that's part of it, is trying to establish those kind of things. The other things is trying to determine those individuals that want to continue or want their farms to stay in agriculture production is what can we do to help them get that done and continue to have a pretty good life as they retire, which a lot of times, you know, from an agriculture standpoint, from a landowner standpoint, their retirement's in that land out there. So we're trying to find ways to establish that they can go forward and live that life in their elderly years that they want to live, but that land continues to stay production agriculture.
Further comment, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, this conversation goes right into our previous conversation with Commissioner Shell on how do we get more mama cows in the system. Well, this is a key factor, right? The land's not there anymore, right? And so as this is an issue for 100 years from now for our citizens here, and just have a request, if you don't mind, any information like this you put together, if you could share that with us, I would really appreciate that.
We'd be happy to.
Thank you.
And this procedure that we've done, it's not just Kentucky Farm Bureau. Every commodity group behind me had a part in this. This is an agriculture objective as we go forward in this state, and it's important to all of us. And it's also important, you know, to those people that don't know agriculture, is for us to educate them and let them understand, you know, our food supply. You know, one of these days we could be to the point where we can't feed ourselves, and what happens to this country if that happens as we look forward. So we appreciate all your comments and any help you can give us as far as us, the agriculture community. Certainly look forward to it.
Thank you.
Senator Givens.
Chairman Heath, thank you, and appreciate both of you and Farm Bureau and the work that you all do in promoting agriculture and addressing policy issues. I also specifically, Larry, want to thank you for taking time from your farm there in Greene County and being here and the work you do in Farm Bureau. Two thoughts on this question, and this is me lobbying my colleagues publicly, but also encouraging them to be ambassadors around this topic. So we currently have in statute, I think it's a $3 million cap on the tax credit, if memory serves correctly. And what's happening, friends, is it's being underutilized. Absolutely. We don't have sufficient utilization of this. So if you're a selling farmer and you consider selling currently to an entering farmer, a first-time farmer, then you, the selling farmer, get a tax credit. That's the benefit and the motivation to cause you to potentially want to sell your farmland to a farmer as opposed to a developer. So with the underutilization that we have going, the preliminary conversations have been, let's go ahead and expand this so it's not simply a new farmer, but even a current farmer can benefit from it because, again, this is not going to have any fiscal impact. If we pass this legislation, the way the budgeting process works, we're already scoring the $3 million against the budget as if it's utilized every year, and it's not. I share all that with you to say let's all be ambassadors for what we currently have in statute. And then my second ask is that if Farm Bureau has not already started working with a member of the House to carry the legislation, because this is considered a revenue-raising measure under the way we budget, because it's a tax exemption, this has to start in the House or be attached to a House piece of legislation. So if someone in the House is interested and excited about the idea, reach out to these gentlemen or anyone on the Farm Bureau staff and indicate to them your interest and willingness to work on this issue. I feel like this is a really good piece of policy legislation to help us continue to work against the erosion, and that's the word we're going to have to start using. This is the erosion of farmland. We're often concerned about the conservation angle of erosion and the loss of quality soil through the erosion process. This is happening much more rapidly than the sort of loss that nature creates. And we know once this land goes into development, it doesn't come back to agriculture. Once a farm is divided into development lots, it hardly ever goes back to being farmland. And we're blessed to have the abundance we have in the United States, so let's all work together to protect that. Thank you for your leadership on this issue.
Thank you.
Chairman Howe.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up on that. Senator Givens, I never thought about us doing policy waterways to stop erosion, but that's a lot, one way of looking at it. This is something that came up at home. We had a family friend retire, and he rented his ground out to younger farmers, and kind of along the line of the sales stuff. You know, very few of us have the luxury of farming just ground that we own without renting ground, especially in row crop production agriculture. Is there anything that anybody else has done that you're aware of nationwide to kind of do some sort of incentive to rent ground to beginning farmers too? I don't know about across the Commonwealth, but at home, when people start out farming, they have to go and rent a bunch of additional ground to get going. I didn't know if there's anything kind of like the seller credit, but any kind of incentive for renting to newer beginning farmers. Is anybody in that space that you're aware of?
Not that I know of, Senator.
My guess, but I just wondered if it's something we may look at.
Representative Stalker.
Thank you so much. My question is in regards to the comments that Senator Givens just made. Could you let us know what is, you said that there was a $3 million cap right now that is not being currently utilized by new farmers. And the ask is potentially let's extend this to existing farmers, which I think makes sense. My question is what percentage of that $3 million is currently being utilized by new farmers?
I can't remember exactly, but it's not very much, to be perfectly honest with you.
Senator Givens is saying that maybe a little less than $1 million.
I would say.
If you could follow back up with committee staff, I'd love to know what that number is. Thank you so much.
And I'm sure Kyle Kelly, I hope he'll be around, and but he'll be, I'm sure, conversing with several of you as we go forward as we try to get some of these things done. So.
Senator Deneen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Briefly, just earlier you spoke of the impact of wills and transferring those farms to their kin. Here in Kentucky, we are one of only 6 states that still have what is called the inheritance tax. Could you maybe expand on the impact of that when it comes to preserving our farmlands and our farms generationally?
Well, I forget the exact figures, but I know if it's from, I forget if it's from parent to child. I forget what exactly the amount is. I know federally it's 6. I can't. I don't want to expound on something I can't remember, but I will say that has an effect. Of course, there's no question to that. And I forget exactly what the amount is here in Kentucky. But Larry, I can't remember what that is. But it has a big effect, of course. Inheritance, not as much on the kids, so to speak, from the parents to the kids, as it would be if somebody else inherited, I guess. Yeah.
Thank you.
Representative Tipton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Drew and Larry, I appreciate you all being here today. You were talking about the Resolutions Committee meeting. I used to serve on the Resolutions Committee, so I know how those members are going through a very long process these days, but appreciate their work on that. Just a brief comment on Senator Dean's question. I think it's always important, especially at our federal level, that we not lose stepped-up basis in regard to inheritance tax. That's so vitally important in helping farm families, especially be able to continue keeping that in the farmland. But my question, we recently, a few weeks ago, saw the devastating effects of Hurricane Helene for neighbors to the south. I've seen numerous videos on Facebook of loads of hay and feed troughs and et cetera going south. Have you been in communication with our friends to the south in North Carolina and Tennessee? How are they faring, and what do they need help with right now?
They, to be honest, Georgia is included as far as one of the states from an agriculture standpoint that's been devastated. I think Georgia and North Carolina, I think Tennessee, I believe, was hit the most. And of course, we come up with a fund that I forget exactly, $200,000 of matching that we sent to those actually 6 states. It's just like anything else, I guess. They're trying to climb out from under it. As you can remember, the tornadoes and the windstorms and the things we've gone through, they've got a pretty good attitude, to be perfectly honest, with those of them that we've talked to. But it's going to be a long process, especially there in the Asheville area and some of those places in Georgia. I forget how many poultry houses, those kind of things they lost. And, they just don't go back up overnight. So regardless whether you got good insurance or not, so to speak. So that's kind of the dilemma that they're in right now.
I think the farming community.
Go ahead, Larry.
The farming community has lost more in Georgia than it has in North Carolina. But I've been to North Carolina 2 or 3 times, transporting stuff down there, and they're in bad shape down there. It's unreal unless you go down there and see it for yourself. It's I've talked to a couple guys that's been in war in other countries, and they said they've never seen anything like it is down there. They're suffering really bad.
Senator Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it was a ham breakfast, and I can't remember if it was the commissioner that shared that there's only 4 countries in the world that have prime farmland to the degree, I guess, and that providing food for the world. And the United States is one of those countries. And I think it was Argentina, Ukraine, and one other I can't remember. But it began to really concern me about our food supply, looking to the future. Especially, we have to be cognizant of growth, which I'm from a growth county. We're growing, probably the fastest growing county, and we're losing prime farmland in Warren County to developers. And so we can't really stop growth because we need that. But what kind of solutions do you see to that going forward in the future?
I think that's part of this initiative. As we get farther in there, is trying to come up with some of those things. What can we do in order to answer those questions? And it's tough. I mean, when you think about it, and you get back to that, what is your property worth, and who's willing to buy it, and how much do you want it to stay in agriculture production? A lot of those things have to come into play, and try to answer those questions is what we're in the middle of right now, is trying to figure out how we go forward from there. You're just talking about stepped-up basis. That would be devastating, to Kentucky agriculture and everywhere else. For people that's you talk about trying to inherit a piece of property, you take a stepped-up basis away, and, you're probably selling the farm, as unfortunate as that is. So those are a lot of things that's on the table that we want to continue to support and try to find answers to. And, of course, we don't have all the answers, and we hope that with conjunction with our partners back here behind me and those of you that are up here, that hopefully we can come up with some of those.
Thank you, gentlemen. It's been very informative. We appreciate the work you do. Looking forward to see what the committee puts together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll go right down the list and bring up our pork producers next. I understand you guys have a presentation. There's a copy in our members' folders. And if you'll make sure your mic is on and introduce yourself for the record, the floor is yours.
Daniel Adams, farmer from Eddyville area, Kentucky, Lyon County.
Good morning. I'm Nikki Ellis, the Executive Director for the Kentucky Pork Producers Association.
Thank you, Nikki. And if you can pull that mic over towards you a little more and talk direct into it. It didn't pick up real good for some reason.
Is that better, Representative?
Yes, thank you.
Good deal. Good deal. All right. All right, so to get started first, we just want to thank you guys for the opportunity to come in and give an update. We don't really have any direct ask or resolutions from our last meetings. However, we did bring a little bit of a case study on things that we're watching as an association and what our leadership's really tracking. We do have with us today Stephanie Carlson from the National Pork Producers Council, which is our policy and membership folks at the national level who help us along the way with some of the things that we're going to be talking about today. Always like to share our faces of leadership. I'm sure some of you all see some of these folks. And today, we're really going to be talking about what they're passionate about, and that's really safeguarding family farms. I wanted to bring up these numbers. I actually presented these to you about 2 years ago. We were at just over 1,800 hog farms across the state of Kentucky. And I've also provided you guys within your packets today our most current economic development numbers. If you look at that, we've lost over 200 hog farms here in the state of Kentucky over the last few years. And that's due to a number of reasons, inputs and things, but one of the biggest factors has been a ballot initiative that's come to be out of California, Proposition 12, which puts some arbitrary space requirements back to farmers across the country to be able to sell their pork into California. And because of that, farmers have lost their markets. So they've lost their ability to market their hogs and their pork because simply they don't have the millions of dollars to retrofit barns and meet those arbitrary things that animal rights activists used to mislead consumers to put family farms out of business across the nation. So that's one of the biggest reasons that you're seeing a decline in those family farms. I want to let Daniel take it over now.
So this is another thing that we're seeing that some of these animal extremist groups are trying to do, just like with sprinklers and fire suppression systems inside barns, and the way they're going about kind of coming in the back way, trying to get legislation and things passed that make it harder for us family farmers to continue to keep our operations viable. You can see on there that it's just different things. Just like an Animal Welfare Institute interest or put farmers, they're not looking after what's best for the animal. In our opinion, they're trying to put us out of business. So these are some of the things that we just want to make you guys as a committee aware of, that we are trying to battle. MPPC helps us out greatly with this and our state organizations, but these are just ways that they're coming at us where it doesn't have to be like face to face. So. But as you read this, you can just kind of see that we're just looking for some language to protect livestock producers from you guys, and we would be glad to help and try to get the right answers if we're any way possible. But making sure that we get some protection and legislation that helps protect ourselves and our operations. This is some of the numbers that we put together from Prop 12 and what it has done to the cost of pork at the grocery store. So it's not helping anyone. Farmers, we've lost 5,000 farms. The price is going up at the grocery store, not necessarily for us at the market. So our numbers are getting worse because of it. Actually, in some of the research they've done in the open gestation cycles, which is part of Prop 12, that those numbers are going down. We're not as efficient as we were, so as we're not getting paid more money for that product, but our efficiency levels are going down, but the cost at the grocery store is going up. So that cost is not being passed on. Thank you guys very much for all that you do for us in Kentucky agriculture. We see it, we appreciate it, and if there are any questions, we'd be glad to try to answer them.
Thank you for your presentation. And I attended your meeting in Owensboro, and this topic was brought up. And if you go to the slide that shows the interior of a hog barn, there, right there, you'll notice that it has a metal ceiling in it. And the individual at that meeting brought it to our attention that the sprinkler would be below the metal ceiling. The fire would actually be above the sprinkler. It makes no sense. Mm-hmm. And I appreciate him bringing that up, and I wanted to point it out to this committee. Senator Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for coming and presenting today. One of the things I think we fall short on in production agriculture and pushing back on some issues like this is articulating why. I mean, from a production standpoint, it's obvious, but for the other 4 million and change Kentuckians that aren't in the production side of it, I think we fall short sometimes. Something you mentioned in a comment that you go into on the next page, but didn't talk about. I would just like for you to talk a little bit about it. You mentioned that this fire suppression stuff doesn't really benefit the animal. I mean, I was trying to think I don't ever remember a hog barn burning around home, and we have a lot of them. But metal buildings are hard to burn, I imagine. But can you talk through why this supposedly good idea of having fire suppression systems doesn't benefit the animal and can actually cause more problems than it solves? Can you talk through that a little bit, just so we can have it out on the record a little?
Yeah, certainly so. Great question, Senator Howe. So these systems, whenever you all have lots more information in your packets today that you can dig into, but the research that even the NFPA did themselves proves that if there's any sort of a malfunction within hog barns, poultry barns, anything that you're raising a livestock animal in confinement, as you'll see in some of these images here, we have a lot of ventilation. Obviously, airflow is very important. So the first time there's a malfunction, these systems will actually shutter down the ventilation system. So you're also entering into a lot of animal welfare issues there. You can also enter into many environmental issues as well. You think if you have a malfunction, and Daniel here is an hour away from his barn, underneath those barns are deep pits. That's where all of the manure is kept until they're ready to inject those into their fields as a fertilizer. So if you're filling up with water, where is that going to go? You're going to have a huge environmental problem there in your area. And farmers work so closely putting plans and things together to just as we talked about today, to preserve their investment in their farmland. There's just so many risks at hand. And then you also begin to run into biosecurity risk as well. Folks coming in to inspect those type systems, not showering in, showering out, carrying germs from place to place. Many risks, Senator Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know that was in the packet, but I think it's important for us to do a better PR job across industries and talking about some of this stuff. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
I was just asked to point out, too, that there's more information in the LRC committee website. There's too much information to print and put in the folders, so the members can refer back to that LRC committee website if they need additional information, too. Anyone else? Thank you very much for coming. Good job. Appreciate the information and keeping us abreast of your issues.
Thank you all for the opportunity.
We'll bring up Kentucky Poultry Federation, and Commissioner Shell mention Laura Noth by name. And Laura, you're not on the program, but would you want to come to the table with Jamie and when opportunity presents itself, answer Representative Pollak's? We might get you to answer Representative Pollak's question since the commissioner threw you under the bus there.
No, he got close.
Okay.
Good morning, Chairman Heath and Chairman Hall and the committee. Thank you for allowing us to be here. It's always good to come and be able to speak and bring a couple points up and everything. But Laura back there was talking. She wanted me to bring up the point that we still are number one in production. Just got beat a little bit in export. But we buy a lot of Kentucky corn. We'd like it to stay here. And one of the things we were talking about on a regular calls that we have is the 3 of the last 4 poultry companies that came to Kentucky bring their feed from out of state, whether it's Indiana or Missouri. So that's one of the things we try to work on together as well. So, but with poultry, the last 2 years has been different. I've seen things that I've never seen before. Recovering from the tornado through West Kentucky, Pilgrims is back to 100% of what they were before, so they're our largest producer, and there's room for growth with the builds they have there. But with AI as well, we've struggled through a lot of things, and then interest rates has helped. And then last year, Tyson Corden, Indiana, announced a closure of the plant. A lot of that was focused on Indiana, but 25% of the birds they processed at that plant was raised in Kentucky. So that had a direct effect on Kentucky farmers. And some corn went across the line to be sold to Tyson as well. The good thing is we've got almost all those picked back up. So other companies came in, whether it was a pasture company or the neighboring companies picked those up for competition. But it's just interesting, it puts it in the mindset of, in the past, it's always how do we grow? And, the last 4 or 5 years, our growth has been stagnant. And, with the decrease, we're barely hanging on to what we've got. So it's kind of changed. Our mindset is not only how do we bring, how do we continue to grow, it's how do we keep what we've got. And we're looking at legislative issues and also incentives as well. We've talked about a few, but that's, that's some of the things we've got. But one thing that happened this summer that I wanted to bring up that possibly we could talk about policy this session is we had a feed mill that went down. It was basically a communication problem, a technology problem. And everybody in this room's probably had technology problems. We say it's great when it works, but when it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It went down on a Thursday, and by Thursday night we knew we had a problem. By Friday we were bringing feed from out of state, trying to make sure we had birds and had feed because we could not make feed at that facility. And then we ran into the point late Friday night that we did the math that we could not deliver all the feed we needed from out of state because of driver hours. So we reached out to the commissioner on Saturday morning, and by Sunday afternoon we had a DOT waiver. And to my knowledge, that was the first time we'd ever had a DOT driver waiver exemption for non-weather related issue. And that continued the conversation of why haven't we done this before? Because technology is huge, and it could cause an animal welfare issue without the feed or water or anything else. Because we had water issues in Albany and the Clinton County area as well. We had to truck water to keep the birds going, but that was also a community issue. So we were looking at possibility of giving the state vet or the ag commissioner the authority to waive those DOT hours in an emergency situation when it affected animal welfare. So that was one of the things we were looking at, and I'll let Laura talk a little bit because she had a couple questions as well, I guess, that was asked, and I may have covered them, but that's all I had to say. I just wanted to, give you a little bit of update and say thank you for letting us come and talk.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Laura Noth. I'm the Executive Director for the Kentucky Corn Growers and the Kentucky Small Grain Growers Association. So I work with your corn
Is your light on your mic?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, it's on.
Yeah, just pull it up
not
closer. They don't pick up at a distance. Thank you.
So I work for your Kentucky corn, wheat, barley, rye, rice, triticale farmers across the state, and just would be welcome the opportunity to answer any questions. I shared with the commissioner as he was walking past there that he was close on that answer about corn. We continue to be the most productive corn producers in the world, in the United States. Brazil bypassed us just in exports last year for the first time. One of the reasons being tariffs and China's changing of where they were buying corn. They were one of our bigger customers, and they quit buying our corn. And so here in Kentucky, we rank pretty high up there as far as production capabilities compared to Iowa and Illinois. Obviously, they have more acres and little different soils, but our guys punch above their weight class, as we say, because they are very productive farmers in our state. They've learned how to be really good producers, and so the majority of our corn in Kentucky does go to the poultry industry, but over half of it goes to poultry and livestock. And then the other, obviously, places that it goes are very important to the rest of the whole state, and that is your distilleries, our ethanol plant, exports, food production. We have white corn production in Kentucky that goes to tortillas and chips and then is exported to Mexico. So our number one place that our corn leaves our country and goes is Mexico and Canada. So, but wanted to just kind of clarify, we still are the best producers, most productive producers in the world of grain crops.
So we have a question for Senator Howell.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you both for being here. Jamie, what we're seeing in some of the other industries is going into little niche arenas. Something I've seen at home come out more is some of the free range and organic type of thing. Are we seeing more of that show up throughout the state?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm a huge fan of YouTube. I usually watch it while I'm working, and I can't go 10 minutes without seeing a commercial for pastured poultry, and our billboards there in Murray as well. But yes, they've deemed Kentucky, Tennessee, and then basically southern Indiana, southern Illinois, southern Ohio, and northern Mississippi, Missouri, and a little bit of West Virginia as the pasture belt. So those companies are seeing the ability that we have the weather, we have the farmers, we have the land availability, we have the corn to bring those farmers here. So we're seeing an expansion. It's difficult to look at those numbers on a national scale because we have just a few companies here, and USDA won't share that data, but we think we're second or third in actual production of pastured birds, which means birds have access to the outside, and those are all table egg birds. And like I mentioned, most of those bring their feed from Missouri or Indiana, and all of those eggs are loaded up, shipped out of state, washed, rinsed, sanitized, and then brought back into Kentucky. So we don't have a processing facility for them either. So that would be an economic development if we could have another processing facility. We are in talks with one of them to do a wash, grade, and sanitize facility. And with that, I've had the conversation of, is it possible for you to set it up so you can do your business 4 days a week and then have 1 day a week you're open to the public? So university farms or private individuals could come wash, grade, and sanitize and package their products there as well. We're still having those conversations, but the goal is to get them here first and then see what we can do to make sure they have a full process.
From a producer standpoint, are you seeing farmers that are already in traditional poultry move into this as well, or is this a new crop of poultry farmers?
It's both. So we're seeing a little bit of changeover. A lot of the older houses are doing conversion. It really depends whether it has to go organic or not, is how simple that process is. So some of them are organic, pasture-raised, some of them are just pasture-raised birds.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator McPherson.
Hey, I don't know if it's an upgrade or a downgrade. I'm not sure. Let's say GMO corn in New Mexico. Do you see that resolving itself any, or do you see President-elect Trump, and do you know anything about their policy or whether tariffs can kind of back that up and get them to come back to the table, or where are we at on that?
Under the outgoing president of Mexico, AMLO, he instituted a government policy where they said they were not going to accept GMO corn. That was a big concern and obviously not feasible. I mean, that's just not going to, they could not provide the amount of feed that they need for their animals and their people with that kind of decree. The new president, who just took office 1st of October, President Sheinbaum, is more of a scientist. We're very hopeful that her administration will look differently on those decrees. They weren't set in stone. They were not ratified by their, whatever their Congress is called there. But so we are continuing to work with them through the U.S. Grains Council, and it is impacting some of the exports to Mexico. But we, like I said, we have the opportunity to continue to work on it. it violates the trade agreements. And so that there will be cases brought under those rules to try to address the issue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Givens.
Chairman Heath, thank you for the opportunity to ask a question. Let me first say how pleased I am by the strength of our associations and our foundations and those groups that make agriculture so strong. So thank you both and all those presenters today for what you represent, because when we have strong foundations and associations, it lends support to agriculture. Mr. Guffey, my question specifically for you, I've had a couple of farmers in my district approach me with some concerns, and we know perception and reality are two different things. This is a concern that I'm sure you've heard before, and if you could address it for me and or say, David Givens, it's not a real issue. I can accept that as an answer too. Some of our legacy houses, what I'm going to call the older houses that are paid off, the legacy houses, the perception is there that the companies are offering better and different contracts to new farmers in new houses or existing farmers if they'll build a new house than what they're willing to pay for some farmer that's paid his or her house off or houses off. And there's a real perception out there that the industry needs to address. Now, please speak to whether that's just a perception or reality, or is this the first you've heard of this?
Thank you for the question, Senator Gibbons. This is not the first I've heard about it. I've talked to several. And I think even one of my former college roommates building houses in Greene County in that area, he's taking advantage of that upfront money and the additional money. I think as I talk to the companies, every one of them are wanting to expand. But with interest rates and cost, it's just not capable without the upfront money and the extra money to build those houses. The reasons why the compensation is not increased to cover those old farmers, I can't speak to that. That's decisions not made in Kentucky. But that money is there for them to be able to cash flow those new operations to supply the meat needed for the products. And as far as the old houses, some of those legacy houses, like I was talking to Pilgrims the other day, they had houses that are 30 years old that are still in the top 5 production. And it's not necessarily the house, it's the farmer and the maintenance they've done to them. So they're still able to cash flow and do things like that. But I think the big thing is with the interest rates and everything, it's the upfront money is there to help those to cash flow.
Thank you. I don't see anyone else. I appreciate the information, and Laura, appreciate you being flexible.
Sure, absolutely. Anytime, Mr.
Y'all
Chairman.
keep up the good work.
Thank you.
So last but certainly not least, our Dairy Federation. I have milk with my Raisin Bran every morning. So, Mr. Barlow, if you know how this works, if you'll introduce yourself for the committee, and the floor is yours. Good to see your wife with you in case you forget to introduce her.
Thank you, Chairman Heath. Really pleased to be here this morning. My name's H.H. Barlow. I'm a dairy farmer in Barron County and also executive director of the Kentucky Dairy Development Council. And I do feel a little extra pressure today. My wife said, I've never heard you make a presentation. I think I might come and listen. So, y'all don't scare me much, but I'm a little bit concerned about this lady that's been with me 51 years. I've been extremely blessed through those 51 years. We actually have 4 children and 16 grandchildren. I'll do a little bragging while I'm up here if that's okay. But we do have a lot to talk about in the dairy industry, and I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about it a little bit. Let's just look at where we are today. At the end of 2023, we had 340 dairy farms in the state. They were home to about 45,000 cows. It's about 130 cows per farm. Our production was right under 1 billion pounds of milk. That actually equals 120 million gallons. That's quite a bit of milk when you think about it. Farm receipts this year, we're going to hit we hit 220 million, and for the first time, actually, I think dairy milk receipts are going to surpass tobacco receipts in the state of Kentucky. Who would ever think that was possible? a big part of our dairy industry in Kentucky is the processing industry. You know, if you don't have somebody to take care of your product, you know, one of the really unique things about dairy is that we produce a product that has got to be moved every day. Every day. We can't sit and hold it in a grain bin or wait till next week till the cattle prices are better. We have to move that milk every day. We have 4 fluid milk processors in the state. Winchester Farms, owned by Kroger in Winchester. Prairie Farms has a plant in Somerset. Borden Incorporated has a plant in London, Kentucky. And Saputo has a plant in Murray, Kentucky. Also very interesting, we have 3 product processors in the state. Bell Cheese in Litchfield employs a lot of people and takes in a lot of milk. And if you think about it, they take in a load of raw milk, and the next day it goes out in the form of soft cheese. Does anybody eat Baby Bells or Laughing Cow in those little products? So that's half of that across the United States that we have is actually manufactured in Litchfield, Kentucky. The other big product processor is Bluegrass Ingredients. They have 2 locations, one in Glasgow and one in Springfield. They're mainly in the drying business. It's kind of crazy when you go into that plant. They take in a lot of milk. They make 600-pound blocks of cheese, and they turn around and dry that down into a cheese powder. And if you eat Doritos and Cheetos and combos, you might just think a lot of that powder comes from Glasgow or Springfield. So we're very fortunate to have those processing parts available to us. I do need to point out this is a meeting, I think, about economic growth, and one of the main reasons I'm here today, I guess, is to try to stress for some growth in our dairy industry. We are only furnishing half the milk that it takes to supply those plants in the state of Kentucky. Half of that milk comes from out of state, either in Indiana, Ohio, Michigan. Some of it actually comes from as far west as East Texas. So we do have an opportunity for a lot of growth. I did want to say that we do have about 11 farms in the state that are doing on-farm processing. If you're familiar with Kenny's Cheese or Cheney's Dairy Barn, you're familiar with what I'm talking about there. So how do we grow? I think that's the main thing we're looking for. We've got to increase the herd sizes of our existing dairy farms, and then we've got to recruit new dairy operations into Kentucky. And when we do that, we have one clear message: creating economic activity for rural Kentucky in both of those ways. So I do represent KDDC. I think we're a very integral part of this endeavor to grow our existing dairy operations. We have programs presently in place that improve milk production quality. You can read those things just as well as I can tell you. We're very involved in cost share programs to provide our dairy farmers an opportunity to improve their dairy facilities. Our consultants work, continually with our producers for energy grants, water quality, and nutrient management plans. I'm proud to say that in Kentucky, I've been in this business forever, obviously, and we used to just say, thank God for Arkansas, because we were like 48th or 49th in the United States in milk production per cow. Today we're at 37th, and we've got a herd averages over 20,000 pounds, and that's almost unheard of. And I think KDDC and our programs and the things that y'all have helped us fund has a lot to do with that success, and I'm really thankful for that. We actually, in our annual meeting last year in February, we recognized 20 herds, 19 herds, I guess, that were over 28,000 pounds of milk per year, and that's a lot of milk, folks. And so we've really got some professional dairy producers in our state. So the second thing is, how do we recruit new dairies into the state? Why would anybody be interested in coming to Kentucky to put up a dairy operation? Obviously, number one is water. California is the main place that we have interest from. They're running out of water. They've got a lot of environmental concerns, a lot of pressure out there. When water is needed between a cow and a person, who you think is going to win? So they're interested in expanding, and they're wanting to come east to do that. And I think Kentucky is the perfect place. In Kentucky, we have a dairy-friendly environment. People in Kentucky and rural Kentucky are used to cows. We used to have I think in 1980 we had over 3,000 dairy farms. So people are used to dairy cows, and I think that's very important. We have a temperate climate. We're not severely hot like the Southwest or Florida, the humidity. We don't have the severe cold of the Dakotas or Minnesota or Wisconsin. So we've got a great climate. We've got cheap energy that's available to us. As Laura said a while ago, we have an abundant feed supply. One of the things about cows, milk cows, it takes about an acre of corn silage to feed a cow per year, and that's quite a bit of stuff. And that's very important to us to have. I want to also talk about the distilling industry. There's nothing that can eat more spent grains or distillery byproducts than a milk cow. And, it's pretty amazing the amount of distillery grain byproducts that we put through those cows. And the distillery industry, I think, is very interested in seeing us grow our dairy investment. I think rural Kentucky is prime for new investment. I think, if you put a dairy farm down in a new rural area, it can't very well pick up and move to Mexico. It's going to be there for a while. A big thing that we've got in Kentucky is we have the access and the proximity to the consumers below us. You know what the growth, I don't have to tell you about the growth of population to our south, all of the areas in the southeast, and we can ship our milk in that direction. And our organization helps to give us a chance. One of the things, Kentucky is, my goal is to make it the second largest milk producing state in the South. Georgia is probably always going to take number one. They've got a lot of growth. Tennessee's down to 120 dairies. Alabama, Arkansas, South Carolina, Louisiana, they're all under 50 dairies. So in Virginia, North Carolina, we're right in line with them. We're going to pass North Carolina this year in production. So we've got a lot of opportunities, I think, to make Kentucky a great dairy state. I want to look just 1 minute here into how much of these new dairies we're talking about. They're large dairies. Thankfully, I'm going to say they're not corporate dairies. They're family owned. That's the kind of people I've been talking to that reach out for me. They're sons and, of outstanding farmers. They're nephews. They marry into it. They are family farms. I have not been contacted by a single corporate farm that wants to come into Kentucky. But a 5,000 cow dairy takes about $60 million just to put the concrete and facilities in. Each cow produces about $6,500 to $7,000 of production a year. And you multiply that, you're talking about an annual cash flow of a large dairy of about $40 million. We create about 60 jobs on that dairy. But the real thing about a dairy farm, and my next slide will say a little bit more about it, is the jobs that we create that are not actually on that farm. A 5,000 cow dairy will produce between 8 and 10 semi-loads of milk a day. That's 8 to 10 truck driving jobs, and that's a big deal in my opinion. This next slide is one I've always looked forward to giving out. It's called an economic engine. I don't think there's any form of agriculture that will put more dollars in a community than a dairy farm. And you can just look around that circle, and I want to highlight a couple of things. That community tax base, Senator Howell, I think you understand, we talked about it. If that dairy had come into Fulton County, what it had done for that tax base in that county. So I am still getting considerable interest from, actually some from Texas out west, about wanting to come to Kentucky to expand. But it takes a collaborative effort. It takes quite a bit of things to happen to make it happen. So how do we make these dreams of increasing our dairy industry into reality? Number one, we've got to create economic incentives, and I think this is where I would ask your help, is to look at what this is doing. What can we do to get some economic incentives? I'm in conversation with states like Kansas, who have really increased their dairy industry, and they have all had a lot of economic incentives. We've got to streamline the permitting process. Back again to Fulton County, we had a dairy plant on coming from, they actually bought land, started getting ready to make construction, but there's a lot of permits that go involved when you have this size of operation. They started the endeavor in late 22, and it was August of 23 before they had permits to build their dairy. They were planning on coming. In the meantime, they actually got an opportunity to buy an adjacent dairy near their dairy in Bakersfield, California, and they kept the dollars in California. But I would encourage us to find a way to streamline this permitting process to get it down to a 2 or 3 month time frame instead of stretching it out over such a long time. And the third thing is we've got to have it's a team effort, it's a collaborative effort between the Cabinet for Economic Development, Kentucky Department of Agriculture, and the Ag Development Board, obviously. our legislature and our dairy organization. I really appreciate the opportunity to present to you, and I'm all open for questions. I think Kentucky has a great opportunity to be a tremendous dairy state.
Thank you, H, and we appreciate the years of service you've given and to the leadership in this Dairy Council. Senator Givens, we'll let you go first.
Chairman Heath, thank you again, and H, great to see you, and Kathy, great to have you here too. One of your slides indicated that Tennessee is facing some challenges and maybe losing some dairies and or losing some opportunity. What are they doing wrong that we can watch out for? What's happening in Tennessee?
Well, I think the major thing, dairying's a pretty tough industry. You know, we're subject, as I mentioned earlier, about we've got to move that milk every day. And volatility has been a real big challenge, but I don't, first of all, they don't have the infrastructure that we have. You know, we've got a great service industry. We've got several milk equipment companies that are available to take care of your service. I think we've got a much larger feed processing industry here. And then the big thing is, whereas we've got those 4 processing plants, Tennessee's really down to 2. And they don't really have that manufacturing side as well. So there's a lot of things, I think, here in Kentucky that we've got to offer that they really don't have, and that's one of the reasons I think we've got more potential for growth than them.
Brief follow-up, if I could, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
So one of the conversations we've had multiple times over the last few years has been around the labor situation. Address where we stand today on labor on these farms and what the future looks like.
Well, I'm going to be honest. Most of the milk that's harvested in the United States is done by Hispanic labor. And, you know, what I have found in visiting with these large farms is, you know, the supervisors, the managers, you know, are all usually American-born managers and things like that. And then the other thing I think that we need to address is that there's a lot of opportunity for local farms. I know an Ohio dairy came into Barron County a few years ago and bought a 400 cow operation. They've transferred that in, or they've built that into a 2,000 cow operation. They buy local hay from many of our farmers. They farm out there, or they have custom heifer growers. There's about 3 farms involved in growing heifers for them. They have another guy that comes and pumps their manure. You know, there's a tremendous amount of economic activity that's not really on the labor situation there. So I think you'll, you know, some of our farmers that are not, you know, able to, you know, get the 2,000 acres that you may need to, you know, be in cash grain operations. I think there are opportunities to work with these large dairies for feed production and raising the small stock. Does that answer it?
Thank you. I don't see any more questions. We got Representative Tipton. He just barely got under the wire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Better to be last than not at all. Mr. Barlow, appreciate your presentation today. I think it's been a little bit over 25 years since I left the dairy business. You know, I used to dream at night about getting up and going to the barn, but I'd wake up and I'd stay in bed. But you had mentioned a lot of the regulatory issues. And I was going to ask you the question about that dairy in Fulton County, so I'm sad to hear the news on that. Could you provide the committee or staff some of the specifics, or to help us identify specifically what some of the regulatory issues were, or maybe get some help from Commissioner Shell, so we have specific, so we have some of the specifics on what some of the problems were that delayed the application for these permits?
I can't really tell you about the delay, I guess, but I mean, as you probably understand, milk cows not only produce milk, they also produce a product called manure. So we are under great regulation and we want to be environmental friendly, you know. So the division of water, I think, is where we really is the division we've got to be talking about. You know, I was actually told, and, you know, I don't want to step on anybody's toes, but I guess I'm old enough, and moving on, I'm not going to worry about it too much. I asked to address the water issue and the division of water in the permitting process in the state of Kentucky. And I checked with a few people around, and I was point blank, bluntly told, you better not bug those guys about your permit or they'll bury your permit under the table. And that's what I was told, Representative Tipton. That's an honest answer, and that's what I was told. So I think we must, I think that's where we need to get the economic development people to understand this is real dollars. Can you imagine what 40 million, how many small businesses in, Hart County or, Edmonson County, of course, that's down there close to where I live, produce a $40 million cash flow annually. So we've got to work this together and let them look at it from many angles. And so I would just encourage us to try to get everybody to cooperate together and look at this as an economic development thing for these counties, and bring these dollars in here, and instead of trying to ship our young people looking for somewhere else to go. There's a lot of opportunity in all of livestock agriculture, and I guess that's the answer I have to that question.
Yes, sir.
Follow up. Have you all identified particular properties? So when you talk to producers in other states or people that might be interested, there are some potential properties they have to consider.
Absolutely. That's one of the things that I did the last few years is go to, a place like McLean County. We started out some in Trigg and Todd. Christian County, those farms down there are really, really, land per acre is really expensive. We actually talked to Senator Givens, and Greene County has got an opportunity. We've got opportunities in Barron County for some land to be used as dairy farms. And most of the part, like in my part of the world, all of the farms around this land are ex-dairy farmers. And when I asked them, would you grow feed for a 5,000 cow dairy? Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I think we've got places identified, absolutely, that we can take some dairies. And the thing that I've noticed in other parts of the country is if you get one dairy, you could very easily get 3, 4, 5. And if we get up to like 25,000 new cows or 30,000 new cows, then we're going to attract a new processing plant. And then that's the value added that we would keep talking about. The beef processor, we keep talking about we need a beef processor. We can add dairy processing, but we got to have cows first. So those are the way I would look at it.
You mentioned moving on. I wasn't sure where to bring this up or not. Do you want to talk about your immediate plans and what's going on with leadership at the Kentucky Dairy Development Council?
Sure. I'm getting kind of long in the tooth, I guess you'd say. My life's been revolving around a cow. I've loved it, and I've done just about everything in it. I've sold feed. I've been on co-op boards. But honestly, I'm 74 years old, and I've decided that at the end of the year I need to retire from this position as executive director. I plan to continue milking cows. We have a search committee in place, and actually we have a great slate of candidates. We've narrowed it down. They've narrowed it down to 3 prospects, and they're going to be interviewed November 21st, and there will be a new executive director hired at that time, and hopefully they can be the next person to present to you. But it's been a great run. I've been very honored to have the position. I guess my life could be described because of a cow. That's who I am, and it's been a great run, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. And I wouldn't have known about that, but one of the members that's been interviewed reached out to me, and that's the first I'd heard about it. So I was curious if you were going to bring that up today. So appreciate you informing the committee on what's going on. Appreciate your friendship and everything you've done for us, and for the council.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next meeting will be December 19th at 1 p.m. I know that's a little out of the ordinary. Murray State's feasibility study for the veterinarian school is supposed to be available to us at that time, and we'll have the information brought before the committee. So if there's nothing else, committee meeting is adjourned. Thank you.